More maps for you. Nothing else, look on the bright side. You don't have to draw them by hand. Previous classes had to do it from basically taking a giant poster board and drawing all the lines of longitude and latitude, and then drawing all the orders and. Oh no, that was actually a lame sauce version of what you did at St. X. I made it like super easy compared to that. St. X did do the same thing in 1 week by memory. That was the final exam. Yeah. Well, yeah, that. And then draw all of it on. Yeah. Using longitude and latitude is not that hard. I think you got to do longitude and latitude beforehand, but not all the countries and capitals. How big? You got a week, so you know. By the end of it, you're going to have done all of it except for probably Pacifica, so that would be good.
What is Pacifica?
Pacifica refers to the islands of the Pacific Ocean, like Australia and Asia. Pacifica. All right. Pretty sure? Pretty sure, guys. Like this.
Oh, yeah.
You've got Russia over here, and it's broke out, and then you've got all these other parts.
I thought you were looking at like that with the boot. I was supposed to.
Yeah, but the boot's down, so.
It's like
Huh? You have a week, yeah.
You said I didn't just want to look at it.
Do what?
You said I didn't just want to look at it.
No. You guys good? Yeah. Uh-huh. Countries and capitals. All right. You guys can put that guy away. So, certain location and place in terms of geography today, as I'm sure you're aware. And basically, Europe is going to be divided into 3 main sectors: the south, the north, and the east. We can actually differentiate between the south to be the southern part of Europe plus the Mediterranean region, but we're just going to do it north, east, and south. So northern Europe refers to very cold areas for the most part, including England, but also the Nordic countries: Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Denmark, Ireland. And as you can see, as you get high up there, 60 degrees north, starts to get pretty chilly. I don't know if you guys have ever thought of it this way, but if I show you the world map, things kind of start to make a little bit more sense. Because if you compare, say like, just following the sake of ease, here in the southern tip of France, that's 45 degrees. That's on par with the southern part of Canada. You go up here in the Nordic area, you're almost to the Arctic. So when you talk about these type of areas, it's very different, I think, than some people tend to experience. As far as the physical shape of the land, it's been heavily influenced by the expanding glaciers over millions of years, a process known as glaciation. So, for instance, in the northern continents, the northern part of continents, you have this formation of these V-shaped narrow inlets called fjords. Thank you. Fjords. Zoe Adams?
Seriously, bro?
Yeah. Yeah. Told you, I don't know anybody ever in South Wales. My bad, dog. It's MBB, my bad, dog. Anyways, oh my. So, glaciation has formed these fjords by carving out this area and leaving behind these deposits, which in turn means that there's this natural harbor that have been used by the Vikings and other seafaring peoples to develop their naval technology. So it's pretty cool how the physical environment can shape human culture. In addition, we affect the physical environment. It's a give and take, you know. For instance, much of the northern portion is actually below sea level. And that's a problem, because if you can imagine a giant bowl and the water gushing into it, you know, this area is prone to flooding. So people there use dikes, the big earthen seaworks, to keep the water out. What's actually cool, they can actually use it to create land in the first place. So if you can imagine, you've got like, you know, the beach kind of area going in, you've got water, the ocean, things like that. What we can actually do is use these massive piles of earth and create this kind of hill that, of course, acts as a buffer between the sea and this sort of inland lake. Now here's the thing is, what happens to this water if I'm not feeding it with rivers or milk or anything like that? If I'm not adding more water to it, what's going to happen to it? It'll slowly evaporate. Sure, so the water will less and less over time. However, we can actually encourage that if we want. We can set up a pumping station that hoses and literally suck the water out of it, creating dry land. So we no longer have this inland lake. We have land that was once under the ocean, which we call boulder. And we can, you know, build houses or, you know, whatever we want here. Maybe we'll put dinosaurs there. Whatever. You know. Put a top hat on it, too. At least a fancy hat. Just whatever. And that has increased the land area in places like the Netherlands. However, it's always a problem if the fjord were to, say, break. Well, then, let's just say goodbye, Mr. Dinosaur. Wah, wah, wah. Nature finds a way. So, anywho, Northern Europe is kind of unique in this regards, but also we have all kinds of other physical boundaries and things like that that are going to set the various European regions apart from one another. For instance, what is this? Yeah. What do you do with the windmill? Like, what's the purpose of the windmill? Yeah. Well, nowadays we use them to create energy, sure. And actually, what's interesting is, you know, I guess this just shows my age. I've been teaching this class for 8 years. They're starting in St. Anne's. And whenever I used to ask students, they would say, well, you know, for grinding grain. Because, you know, in fairy tales, things like that, you know, you have millers who, you know, have mills, windmills, and they grind up grain and make flour out of it, you know. But now, with the increased, or the more widespread use of wind technology, that's what some people didn't think. You know, it's fascinating to me. You guys don't care. Moving on. But anyways, a windmill just takes wind power and converts it into any type of power. Now, power and energy are not necessarily the same thing. nor is electricity necessarily the same thing. Power refers to potential work. So I can make this run any kind of different machines. As you said, I can run a generator and make electricity. I can hook it up to a saw and make a sawmill. I could grind grain. I could make gunpowder. I could hook it up to one of these pumps to create a Kohler. I can do all kinds of things. In fact, the Netherlands, the reason there's so many of these guys in the first place was because they were using it to keep everything dry. In addition, it's just useful because whenever we're talking about early forms of work, generally speaking, it's either muscle work, water work, or wind work. You know, for instance, I could hook up 2 cows and have them walk in circles. Really oxygen would be more the thing. And cause the same electrical energy. Basically, it's like an engine, you know. But ultimately, it created this Kohler. This is a fjord, by the way. And it's incredibly important to the movement of various types of animals. For instance, whales use them to gather food resources, things like that. Some animals breed in the salmon in Alaska use this area in particular. And we were actually there for our honeymoon years and years ago, my wife and I, and saw these whales in this fjord along the Tracy Arm Fjord. They were fishing. It was pretty cool. The islands of Europe, on the other hand, are pretty varied. For instance, I think some folks don't tend to think about it, but England is an island, you know. Technically, England's a country in the United Kingdom, but the United Kingdom, for the most part, is not. As an Ireland. And there's also several different islands along the Mediterranean, the Ionian Sea, all these different places. And because of that, we have to understand that just because you're an island doesn't mean you're tropical. You know, there's going to be a variety of different climates that are going to impact a whole bunch of different types of things. For instance, you know, there's a reason they call Ireland the Emerald Isles, because of the type of plants that grow there. In addition, in Greece, that Mediterranean climate is known for a type of plant called chicorée, which is really not really so much a breed of plants, but rather a class of plants, generally kind of short, scrubby type bushes. 2 of the most famous of these, or small trees, would be like olives and grape vines. For instance, if you tend to think of Greek cuisine, olives are probably in there somewhere. Or even Italian, for that matter. Extra virgin olive oil, things like that. But wine was also an important thing because of its use for converting this sugar energy into something that was more readily available, something that was going to last. Anyways, I digress. So, again, you see where the environment shapes the human condition. You know, how we react, things like that. Probably one of the best examples of this, going back to fjords, were how the Vikings created these longships. In fact, the very first person to discover, that was a European anyhow, the New World was Leif Erikson, who was a Viking. Suri? We refuse to let our child watch that show. One, because it's annoying and dumb. And 2, SpongeBob. I will remain crotchety old man in my stance on that. I don't.
You share the world in your crotchety old man.
No. I did actually see a study that said that it causes attention deficit disorder, but I doubt that strongly.
I don't.
Do what?
I didn't think so.
It's not funny. It's not entertaining.
Well, not to
Basically, to me, you might as well have someone banging their head against the wall for 3 hours, and that would be more entertaining than SpongeBob.
I think that would be kind of funny, though.
It's funny, like, if we're anywhere in the house, we hear that, oh, it's shut the TV off. It's come, like, no, we're not watching that. nice.
I can't believe you guys still watch that show. It's so old.
Like the older version, like the 1920s.
It's like people who still watch The Simpsons. It's like, really? Really?
I watched
Oh my god. I got you.
All right, so this is completely unrelated, but also interesting to me. How many guys are going to go trick-or-treating this year?
I'm not dressing up.
I'm never too old for candy.
It's not the same. It's going by. It's like trick or treat.
I'm just curious, because like, you know, at St. X, you should say that. Like, it was like trick or treat. It was just instant, like, mockery. It's like, you did not go trick or treating. But heck, I even know, like, in my grade school, most people didn't go trick or treating past the age of 7th grade. Like, it was seen as childish and come up with stuff. I think something's shifting.
Isn't there a way that like age limit?
No.
Now,
Now, I will say, we will be spending some time going over Halloween in this section because it's actually an American holiday, but it's adopted from European traditions. So it's kind of like a Samhain, yeah. But the other thing is that what had happened was that it originally, where it comes from initially, is actually a reaction.
In Fortner version of this, we can figure out who that means. Anyone else here Fortner?
That's what I heard you guys say. I thought you guys said Madeline Fortner or something like that. I was like, what?
Madison Corpus.
I probably misheard Scorpion. It could be on there twice.
yes, that was on there once.
Yeah.
Alright.
Anyway, I can't hear anymore. I just need to stop asking. Because this happens every day. I need to stop asking, just go through the old-fashioned way, so I have the master.
Listen,
Hmm.
you have that.
What? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's true. Actually, I kind of blame the Cannons a little bit. That one being a metal band before day.
What?
Anyhow, that did happen a long time ago.
My dad was in that air.
Yeah, no, we weren't on a hair band. Well, I guess we kind of were, but that's all right. Anywho, but back to the original complaint. What happened was during the Great Depression, you had a lot of youths who basically were out on the streets and bored, and the night before Halloween, they began trashing the place, like just would cause all kinds of pranks, smash windows with rocks, do all kinds of things. And so what happened was some neighborhoods, to protect themselves, started bribing the kids with sweets. So they'd be like, hey, just leave us alone here, and here's some stuff. And sometimes they throw parties and encourage the dressing up with kids, to sort of like, get in the spirit of things. And that's why when kids go door to door, they say trick or treat, because it's a threat. These kids would go up to the door and be like, give me something good to eat, or I will wreck up your house. I will pull a trick on you. It's blackmail, is what it is. Which is hilarious when you think of a little kid, because my daughter goes trick or treat, and trick or treat, like, I'm gonna mess you up, kid. That's what it is. That's what it is.
I thought it was like you were supposed to do a trick and then they give you like
No, that's not where the term trick comes from.
do a cartwheel.
Right. Yeah.
So do something like the trick or treat in your house.
Not really. There's another similar holiday in Britain, which is Guy Fawkes Day, and they don't say they're going to say penny for the guy. Guy Fawkes was a guy who basically was revolting, was part of a rebellion against the British Crown, and was caught in this act of trying to blow up a building, Parliament building, using gunpowder, and he was caught and executed. And so it's kind of a weird holiday. It's just
Wait,
Guy Fawkes Day.
Like, you know the Halloween, like the trick or treating song?
Yeah.
You know how like kids sometimes like sing it to
Yeah.
people when they go up to like the church?
Yeah.
Well, me and my cousins like sing it to like,
Have you
back row.
Oh, so, and I went to a tree, right? I never went out to this year. But I went to a tree with my little brother, and it said, say trick or treat right here. So I said trick or treat, and I was standing on some type of trap. And I didn't know about, so I said trick or treat, and so did he. And then all of a sudden, this person just came out with a chainsaw. We just ran, and then I go trick or treating after that one house.
That's kind of hardcore. I'm not gonna lie.
There's this one house on Pioneer Street. It's like every single year they do something completely different, but they go all out and scare everybody on the street. Nobody likes them.
So that's my plan. And I'm backing this up because where we live in a double cul-de-sac, so people just tend to not go back there. And so we always have this stupid amount of candy. What I was thinking is like, we just start getting like full-size candy bars, like leave that house, or you get like the full-size one. And it's like the holy grail. Actually, I thought I was getting one of those packs you get from the dollar store. It's like 10 candy bars. It's like a trick or treat. You've done well. Whoa! You know. And my daughter, like, they were like a hurricane last year. She was going around. It was really cool. She had this spider costume, like the legs all new. But she went to this house and she's like, trick or treat, and they're like, you're the only one out. Boom! Empties this whole ball. Like, thanks. She's like 2. All that mess, you know. Yeah.
Like rich neighborhoods because that's where I live. There's a bunch of poor people and they're going to give me like Twizzlers.
What's wrong with Twizzlers?
They're disgusting.
Yeah.
I live in kind of a rich neighborhood, like we don't like being called rich, but we are kind of rich. But there's a lady across the street from us, and she likes to, and she has horses in Mount Washington. So she brings them in and she dresses up like a headless horseman and she runs up and down the street.
Nice.
I'm going to have real cheese for children this Halloween.
Grilled cheese? That's awesome. Have a meatball hoagie. Thanks. Yeah.
The way I grew up there, we didn't have trick or treating. It's just like on Halloween. Nobody did any lights on day. We lived in apartments, but when
Oh,
I
yeah.
come home, she would take me like out to where all these people had all their candy. And so, like she had brought my friend along this one time. She had brought my phone. She didn't go. And we went up there, and it was nice. My friend had a pillowcase. She had more candy than I did, and she was the wrong one.
Oh, yeah. But that's the thing, is all the apartments, and I used to live in apartments, they all bought candy, but we didn't have anybody. It's like, that's the place to go. Because you can hit all these doors, and you don't have to go very far. That's where it's at. But, you know, no one thinks about it. That's all right. We'll talk more about Halloween later. Let's look at physical geography. So mountains, highlands, that sort of thing. Pyrenees, the Alps, Carpathians, and Urals, that's the main ones. As far as rivers, the Danube is the largest river. It actually stretches all the way from Romania to nearly France. So it's a pretty big place. As far as the plains are concerned, they've always been very important traditionally. That particular area is where the farmers settled in the first place. Basically, Europe is filled with awesome farmland. That's why people settled there. All kinds of different peoples. And they domesticated animals and plants for specific purposes. I mean, if you think about it, meat, which is one of the principal crops that comes out of Europe, is grass. It's just evolved grass. Although it's been artificially selected to do this specific purpose, which is actually kind of a neat process. I'm assuming you guys know or have studied at some point theory of evolution. Yes? Okay. So that's all about artificial selection. Natural selection is where human beings actually choose traits that we want in various plants or animals, things like that. Great example of that is dogs and cats. How many different breeds there are, for instance. Each type of dog being bred with specific characteristics that we want out of that dog. Yeah?
You know, like, whenever they ever serve dog food and stuff, and the dog food there's like a lot of vegetables and stuff, but the cat food is mostly meat.
Yeah.
Because when people got dogs, when people like got dogs as pets, when they was first trying to domesticate them, they fed them whatever they ate. He ate, so that's really a lot of things. But he people got can't sleep twice, so they don't need to sleep.
Well, yeah, but that all, dogs, even wolves are omnivores. They, well, not expressly omnivores, but they can actually digest more than cats can. If you look at the intestines of the two different animals, cats are more or less a straight line. That they're carnivores, so that means that they have a high area of nutrition. So when they, pass the stuff through their digestive tract, they get the nutrients they need pretty quickly. That's why they're actually be kind of like lazy. They don't have to eat everything. Although they won't let you forget it if you feed them. Let me tell you. Dogs, on the other hand, don't have that same type of digestive tract. They can actually digest plants and animals. If you try to give a cat like vegetables, straight vegetables, they can't digest it. It's really kind of not good for them. The only types of veggie they can actually eat, and they do actually need some of that stuff, is by eating the intestines of the animal that they've killed. That's why when it comes to cat food, it's specially designed to meet all those needs and things like that. Now, getting into gross stuff, that's also why dogs like to eat cat food. True story. If you have both dogs and cats, they go, what we call is go digging for cookies. Because cat food is actually not very well digested. It's very high in all of the proteins and fats and things you find in the meat. So basically, it's a lot of unused nutrients. So the dogs will go back and eat it. To them, it's like a candy bar. It's full of all kinds of yummy things, which is gross. But that's what happens. That's a process, and I'm sure part of things that we've contributed. But like a great example that actually, have you guys seen anything about the werewolf breed of cat? It's a relatively new thing. They are lacking a lot of fur. They're not hairless, but like they're missing clumps of it, so they look like a werewolf. And if you were just to leave them outside, they would die of exposure because they don't have a full coat of fur. So they're 100% dependent on human beings. This is true of some dog breeds as well, like bulldogs nowadays. A lot of them, like the specially bred ones, the what is it, the American Kennel Club or whatever it is, AKC. They are so big in the shoulder they can't be born naturally, so they have to be delivered by cesarean section. So this is artificial selection at its finest, because if we just leave these creatures in the environment, they die off, they don't pass the genes on, thus they don't exist as a species. That's kind of how that works. And plants are no different than that. There's a magazine my in-laws give occasionally. It's a horticulturalist magazine. You can buy all kinds of different plants. They have a thing called an orchard, an orchard tree. And an orchard is, of course, a grouping of different types of fruits and things like that. And there's actually all kinds of different breeds of apples. You actually want that because you want them to cross-pollinate in some cases, or in other cases you just want the different types of fruits and things like that you don't want to cross. This particular tree has grafts of like 5 or 6 different kinds of apples on the same tree. It grows different types of fruits. I even saw one that's called a fruit cocktail tree that was something like different kinds of berries and apples. It was really kind of cool. But this is kind of the influence we have on these types of plants, Yeah.
I was going to ask you what a Simone Italiana is.
The term is familiar, but I can't.
It's a type of dog. I always ask people like what? What's the type of dog I have? They kind of look like German wired, short hair.
Yeah. It's kind of a unique breed, whatever. But, again, this is just kind of how Europeans have evolved. And, or rather, not really evolved, that's not a proper word, but that's how they developed as a culture, including evolution, or rather the artificial selection of different crops. And because of that, they had them in other places too. So, for instance, the Europeans had access to different types of livestock that gave them this sort of inherent resistance to smallpox that other native groups did not. So again, kind of tribute to that discussion we had earlier. But that right there is the Danube. Again, the longest river in Europe. Now, there's also areas that we call uplands. There's 2 major ones. One is the Meseta, which is in Spain. It's actually northern Spain, in Massif Central. which is in southern France. It's this area right along in here between the Pyrenees. That area is kind of unique because it is not quite mountains, but not quite plains either. It's sort of like halfway. And again, it's somewhat unique to this area of the world. One thing, as you start to look at the physical geography of Europe, you'll see it's pretty heavily divided by physical barriers, whether they be mountains or rivers. It means that the various boundaries we find in Europe frequently fall along these lines, and in some cases have physically isolated different groups. For instance, if you look at ancient Greek history, you'll see that they had a high reliance on independence from each other. For instance, they had the concept of the city-states. A city that is its own nation. They did not see themselves as Greek. Greece did not exist. Instead, you had city-states like Sparta, Athens, Corinth, all of them independent both in political machinations, but also in culture. So they had wildly different attitudes about things. And while they had similarities, they were Greek, they also were quite different. This is because, as one group, they were independent of each other by physical boundaries. Again, the world shaping the way that people develop, different languages and customs and things like that. And of course, historically speaking, these areas were significant for their various contributions. Sparta being well known for having the first standing army, the first democracy existing in Athens. All of these things were unique to this area of the world. Which, by the way, you guys know what a standing army is, what I mean by that? Yeah. They didn't do that, but no, standing army means professional army. Their job was to be soldiers, and that's all. We have a professional standing army. Not everywhere did that. In fact, most places have what we think of as being like a militia, where you have common people who would be drummed up as soldiers in times of difficulty. If you've ever seen the movie 300, they have this scene where King Leonidas is talking to these guys, and how many soldiers did you bring? I brought this many folks. I should have expected the Spartans to not bring enough soldiers, things like that. He's like, didn't bring enough soldiers. What's your profession? The guy says, I'm a potter, sir. Potter. What's your profession? I'm a baker. The Spartans, what is your profession? They give a war cry. It's like, I brought more warriors than you did. You just brought a bunch of guys who are carrying spears. So that's kind of the whole point of it, is this whole idea of the standing army. In addition, Athens, their democracy is a democracy. They were really closer to an oligarchy in truth, but that in itself was kind of significant. The difference is that in Athens, yes, it was a democracy. Every citizen had the right to vote. It's just that the right to be a citizen was restricted. Not everyone could be a citizen. In fact, few people were citizens. So there still was a class, and Rome was really kind of the same sort of way. In fact, for a long time, a lot of rights were restricted to people, even in the United States, such as the right to vote. You had to have certain aspects, certain things. For instance, one of the things that you had to own land. Well, think about that for just a second. How many people own land in the United States? I mean, not like I have a mortgage and I'm buying it. I mean, own it by themselves, no help. It's a really small percentage, in fact. So that would really, really limit the activities of democracy. And indeed, such laws were used to oppress African Americans from voting in the first place, even after they were granted the right at the end of the Civil War. Not to mention all kinds of other bogus tests and things like that. But eventually that was sort of gotten rid of and things like that, and a true democracy established. That being said, it's still something we're working towards. All right, we're going to call that good for today. So, a few minutes or so.